Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aaron Blade, and I am the editor, creator, and producer of what you're watching right now, Blade Talk. If you are new here, welcome, and you find this presentation helpful, informative, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Do me an even greater favor and subscribe to my channel. I always appreciate all the support that I am given. So in today's presentation, I want to tackle a controversial issue: interfaith marriages within Judaism. Why, if you're a Jew, should you marry someone else who is a Jew? So, if you're interested in hearing my thoughts, let's hit that intro and let's begin. Okay, so before we begin, let me assert my position that I am in full support of Jews marrying other Jews. I'm a conservative Jew, and I am all for Jews marrying each other. And I'm going to dive deeper into why I'm against interfaith marriages. But before I do, let me begin by telling you a story. And please listen carefully, because you're going to have to say what you think about the story momentarily. Imagine for a second you work in a prestigious law firm and a new male lawyer gets hired from one of the top law schools in the country. Top law student from top law school and now in the top law firm. He walks in, and the ladies notice him immediately. He's obviously very charismatic, he's very good looking, so the women begin to talk and they ask each other what they think about the new lawyer. One woman is very interested, and her friends egg her on to ask him out. He's successful, she's successful, and they say go for it. She introduces herself, and as they are talking, she finds herself even more interested in him. One day, she sees him getting a cup of coffee, and she decides I might as well go for it. She goes up to him and asks him out on a date. He politely declines. Now, of course, this is devastating to her, but she wants to know why. So she enlists the help of a friend. Now, this friend's job is to find out why he rejected her. Is he gay? Is he married? Etc. The lawyer responds to the friend, and I want to tell you what he said, because what he says is fascinating. But before I do, I want to mention something. I told you that the man was charismatic, he was good looking, he was successful, but I should also mention that he's black, African American. And she's a white woman. Some women like tall guys, short guys, fat guys. She likes black guys. So this man tells the friend this, and listen to what he says. He says, I'm sorry. I'm sure she's very nice, but I don't date white women. Now, this is the 21st century, and that is not a politically correct thing to say. There's an uproar in the office, people are talking, and some even take offense to his comment. Someone even comes up to him and accuses him of being a racist. He knows he has to defuse this bomb that has been lit. He says the following: I'm sorry, I didn't phrase it correctly. What I meant was, I'm very into my African heritage. I read the literature, I listen to the music, and I'm involved in the political movements. This is a big part of my life, and I only want to date and marry someone that can share that identity with me. And for me, personally, that woman has to be black. So that's the story. Now a question for you. Do you think he's being racist? Well, I suppose it depends on how you define it. Technically, I think you can make a case that he's being racial. But the way we use the word racist is a negative term. I'm up here and you're down there. I don't want to be friends with you because you're lower than me. I don't want to work with you because you're lower than me. It's seen as a negative. But in this story, he didn't really say anything negative about white people at all. Was he being racist? You be the judge. Our topic today about interfaith marriages are from a Jewish perspective. I think it is important to note that Jews have no problem with different races dating and marrying. As Jews, we are scattered all over the world and come in many different shades. I know there are some that believe that Jews all have the pale skin and Yiddish accents, but that's not true at all. As a matter of fact, did you know that the majority, a statistical majority of Jews in Israel do not have the classical Caucasian white look? There are dark-skinned Iraqi Jews, Yemenite Jews, Persian Jews, Afghani Jews, Ethiopian Jews, etc. We are a multiracial, multicultural people. I myself am a descendant of North African Jews or Sephardic Jews. We have no problem with couples of different skin tones marrying each other. It's a beautiful thing. So why do I start this presentation with that story? Well, because for the next half hour or so, I'm going to be speaking about one of the most controversial, sensitive subjects that can be raised. It is intermarriage. Jews dating and marrying non-Jews. Whenever you bring this discussion up, it sounds terrible. It sounds like you're being racist, narrow-minded, parochial, thinking you're better than someone else, etc. It just sounds awful. The conversation can't even begin because people essentially shut you out. What kind of person would deny the love of two people just because one is Jewish and one isn't? I start with that story to make a very clear point. I am not thinking or saying anything bad about anyone. I am here on this platform saying that I encourage Protestants to marry Protestants, Catholics to marry Catholics, Muslims to marry Muslims, Hindus to marry Hindus, and yes, Jews to marry other Jews. Now, I want to be clear that when someone converts to Judaism, that is not an intermarriage. That is two Jews marrying each other. You had a halakhic conversion, you're Jewish, period, end of story. We're talking about one person who is Jewish and one person who isn't. Next thing I want to state is that I'm not judging anyone. I'm going to share information, and what you do with it is completely up to you. I'm looking at the statistics to form my conclusions. Something like 70% of Jews, not counting Orthodox Jews, are intermarrying, so it is a real thing. Now imagine for a second you have two people moving into your neighborhood, a man and a woman in their late 20s, and they are both looking for love. I want to emphasize that they've never met before, and you have a sense that they would hit it off, so you decide to play matchmaker. There's only one thing that's making you hesitate. You see, he is a practicing Muslim. He prays 5 times a day, celebrates the holidays, travels to Mecca, etc. And she is a practicing, believing Catholic. She goes to Mass, follows the Pope, etc. Two people that are observant in their respective religions, and you have a sense that they would hit it off. The question is, would you set them up on a blind date? Now, when I ask this question, easily over 90% of people say no. I'm not going to set up an observant Muslim with a practicing Catholic. Of course, there's always that minority, maybe 1 or 2 people that says, yeah, go for it, let's see the fireworks. Now, if you change the variables, then everything changes. You'll hear different scenarios like they're only 18, they're just looking for something casual, or they already met, or they're already in love. And in those instances, it changes things. But in this scenario that I just described, they're in their late 20s, looking to get married, never met. Most people say, why look for problems? He'll find a nice Muslim and she'll find a nice Catholic. So fact number one is that most people will say they would not set up a Muslim and a Catholic. Fact number two is what I quoted before. Over 70% of Jews are intermarrying. So my question to you is clear. Why is it most people won't set up a Muslim and a Catholic together, and on the other hand, the majority of Jews are okay with marrying non-Jews? The answer is simple. I told you that there were religious people, a religious Muslim and a religious Catholic. So it makes perfect sense to say, yeah, if you're religious, you should marry someone in the same religion. Most Jews that intermarry are not that religious, meaning it isn't central to who they are, their identity. They have a lot of different hats that they wear and they don't want to be tied down. For example, you can be a woman and you can also be a Democrat. You can also be a cyclist, and she could just so happen to be Jewish. Being Jewish is just one of the 7 or 8 things that you could identify with being. It would be nice to share that with your spouse, but obviously no one will share everything with their spouse, right? So it's clear, if you are religious, then marry someone that is also religious. But what if you aren't religious? This, I believe, is the key question facing the Jewish people. Is it important for Jews that aren't religious to have a Jewish family? For a second, I want you to take a look at this graph. You have the y-axis and you have the x-axis. This graph is going to be focused on how involved someone is in their religion, culture, heritage, etc. I'm mixing them all together because it really goes together in Judaism. On the vertical axis, you will have how involved they are in their religion or heritage. On the horizontal axis, you will have their age. 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, all the way until death. I want to explore what the statistics say together. Let's say, for example, someone was born in a very religious family and was very religious their entire life. What would the line look like on this graph? High involvement from birth until death. This is where many Orthodox Jews fall. Now let's look at someone, say, that was born Jewish, of a Jewish mother, but they never knew that they were Jewish. They didn't know a thing about being Jewish. What would the graph look like? A low horizontal line, which is where we find many secular Jews. Now I want you to use your mind and think about what happens on this timeline for most people as they go through life, whether they are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, etc. Now I can only speak for Jewish people, but the reality is after the bar or bat mitzvah, the involvement in Jewish-related activities plummets. They are teenagers rebelling, the parents don't want to fight with them anymore, etc. As a matter of fact, less than 10% of Jewish college students are involved in Jewish life in any way, shape, or form. It's actually worse in Europe, by the way. From birth in a religious home until about 12 or 13 years old, the involvement in their religion, culture, and heritage is quite high. Now, it may be artificial, of course. Parents may be forcing them to attend services and whatnot. Nevertheless, there is still high involvement in their community, in their religion, their heritage, their culture. Then 6 to 7 years later, it goes down dramatically. Now think about this. If you had to choose a decade of a person's life where they are the least religious, where do you think it would be? Which 10-year period? Is it the teens, the 20s, 30s, 40s? As it turns out, statistically, it is the 20s. It starts in the late teens and carries over into the 20s. This is where they basically say that this is my time, a time for me. They're not in their parents' house anymore. Their parents can't tell them what to do. They don't have family of their own yet with any obligations. They want to explore the world and broaden their horizons. They want to have fun, establish a career, and they don't want to be tied down to anything. So going back to our chart, Jewish involvement usually starts out high, and then once the late teens and 20s come, it goes down dramatically. But something very interesting happens in the 30s, though. Sometimes it happens in the 40s, sometimes it happens in the 50s, sometimes it doesn't happen at all. Sometimes it even happens in the 20s. But on the whole, in a person's 30s, people start to get re-involved in their religion, culture, and heritage. Now, the obvious question is why? Why do you think people get re-involved in their 30s as a whole? So there are a lot of different reasons, and I'll just list my top 3. One, as you may have guessed, is having children. Having children changes many things, and if it doesn't, then it should. Things you never cared about start to become very important to you. Suddenly you realize you're not an individual any longer. You've started a chain and you have to pass something on. And it should be that way. It should change your perspective on religion, on family, carrying your last name, your legacy, etc. The second reason people get involved again is after a certain point, rational people say, okay, the parties were fun, traveling was great, and people start to settle down. And that's how it should be. You should be growing and evolving. They're looking for community, meaning, spirituality, etc. The last reason is an unfortunate one, but it is someone dealing with sickness, dying, or death. It brings people home. As a matter of fact, the mourner's Kaddish prayer in Judaism has brought hundreds of thousands of people closer to their heritage and closer to God. Those are my top 3 reasons. 1, having children. 2, looking for meaning and spirituality after the partying and everything is done. And 3, dealing with sickness, dying, or death. So going back to our chart, it starts out with a solid foundation into culture, heritage, religion. And then it goes down in the late teens and 20s. Then as a whole, it goes back up in the 30s. Now here's another big question for you. Which of these periods, on average, does a person find their spouse? Take a second to think about it. It's the second period when they feel that they are the least involved, late teens and 20s. So when people come to me and ask me, what's the big deal? We've been dating for 2-3 years. We have no issues. I'm Jewish. They aren't. What's wrong? My answer is usually, well, you're 19. You're 22. You're 25. You're 27. Unless you're ultra-Orthodox, I wouldn't expect there to be many challenges. The challenges of interfaith dating doesn't come until later. So why is it a big deal for a Jew who isn't practicing to marry a non-Jew? The answer is very simple. Because how connected a person is to their religion, culture, and heritage changes drastically as they go through life. Usually when a person is making this decision is also when they are the least able to feel like being Jewish is an important factor into their life. By the way, I don't need a graph to illustrate what I'm saying to you. I don't know you and we've never met, but I know exactly who went to your shul growing up. If you're like 99% of the shuls around the world, growing up, there were parents with young adults, and then you had the elderly, the seniors, and that's it. Individuals between the ages of 15 and 30 rarely showed up unless there were children involved. Now I want to get into the challenges of interfaith dating and marriage. As I stated, most people find their spouse in their late teens or 20s, whether they fall in love or they slip up and get pregnant, and through the pressures of their family, they decide to get married. The problem is that many people believe that all it takes is love to sustain a relationship. Love conquers all, right? Wrong. Actually, love is not enough. Love and successful marriages are not synonymous terms. Everyone starts with love, and I believe the divorce rate is somewhere around 50%. Now, among these 50%, most happen within the first 5 years of marriage. Now, don't get me wrong, love is very important. It's very fundamental, but it is not enough to sustain a marriage. So, what else do you need? Well, obviously, you need trust, understanding, communication, respect, similar values. There's been more than enough books written on the subject of what you need to know before you get married, so I won't dive into that. What I do want to talk about is something that isn't often talked about, and that is practical compatibility. Are these two people on the same page? Are they moving in the same direction? Are they going to work together? I always advise people to have a mental checklist when they go on dates. And don't make it obvious that you're interviewing the person, but that's essentially what a date is. Don't get caught up in things like, do we like the same color? Do we like the same music? Do we like the same shows? Do we like the same careers? That's all superficial. Ask questions about values that could potentially be an issue later. For example, you like to save money. They like to spend money. That can cause an issue later. You want children. They don't want children. That can cause an issue later. You like to plan for the future. They want to live for today. That could cause an issue. Now let's get down to the main point of all the studies that have been done on interfaith marriages, with the earliest being done in 1949. The studies state that when you have two people with two different religions, the chances of problems go up. The first universal reason I encourage Jews to marry other Jews is that it is better for the marriage, fewer problems, and deeper connections. Problems such as, what holidays are we going to celebrate? What community are we going to live in? Who are our friends going to be? How will we raise our children? Now, it is a myth that people don't discuss this when they're dating. They absolutely do. But remember, based off our chart, they aren't caring as much about it at that time in their lives. Now, of course, people will say that you have to compromise, which is true. However, there are some things so central to who you are and your values that it may be better if you found someone on the same path that you are. That is the first universal reason. The second universal reason I encourage Jews to marry other Jews is that I've met children of interfaith marriages, and they will admit that it was very hard. I've met Christians that stated they were half Catholic and half Lutheran. The greatest gift that you can give your children is a clear, positive, and uncomplicated identity. Not the I'm half Jewish, half Christian, because you're forcing the child to make the choice that you couldn't. Why put the burden on a child? I've heard many say, well, they'll figure it out someday. That's horrible. Go around and ask children of intermarriages, and you'll see that the majority of them will admit that it was hard. They felt closer to one parent in their religion over the other. But they didn't want to make the other parent upset, so they went along with it. Understand that children want an identity to be proud of. Now, there are some cases where children of interfaith marriages have a solid identity, but again, it is usually because one parent or both parents didn't really take their religion seriously at all. One or both were secular. This is evident because in most scriptures it commands the adherents of that religion to marry within the faith. The Christian Bible, for example, states, "Don't be unequally yoked with others." The Quran states, "Don't marry non-believers." And the Torah is very much against marrying non-Jews. We even have prophets like King Solomon that violated this and was led astray because of it. He began to idol worship in his later years. Ezra went into public mourning because the Jews intermarried. Nehemiah scolded the Jews because of it. So the two reasons I support Jews marrying other Jews is it's better for the marriage and it is better for the children. Notice, by the way, that there are no guarantees. You can have a happy marriage with a non-Jew. You can have a terrible marriage with someone that is Jewish. It happens. I just advise against marrying for happiness. I was never someone that believed the whole love is love idea. Love is love can include bigamy, it can include two brothers getting married, it can include polygamy, etc. You see, love is love has no real definition. Love in the traditional sense meant duty, familial relations, responsibility. So I've always encouraged people to get married out of duty and responsibility, similar values, as opposed to a feeling. Feelings come and go. They're temporary. You may be happy. You may be sad. You may be bored, stressed, irritated, agitated, all of the above. I've always encouraged people, don't focus so much on marrying the person that you can have fun with, but instead marry the person that you can suffer with, that won't leave you when times get hard. That's rare. When it comes to a Jew marrying another Jew, I'm speaking from a statistical standpoint, not just the way that you were brought up. Or for someone to say, I had a friend that interfaith married and they were fine. I had a cousin that did it and they were fine. Or my great uncle did it and they were fine. Understand that that is the minority. You know, it's funny. As Jews, we are a stubborn people. I was on a plane headed to Tel Aviv one time during Hanukkah, and the captain says, "We're about to land and I want to thank you for flying. And by Israeli law, I want to remind you that you must remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until the plane gets to the terminal." He proceeds to say that seeing as it is the holiday season, the crew and I would like to share our holiday greetings with you all. To all those seated with their seatbelts fastened, we want to wish you a Merry Christmas. And to those getting up and getting your bags, ignoring the rules as usual, we would like to wish you a Happy Hanukkah. The fact is that Jews don't like rules. We're a stubborn people. Did you know the Torah, the Bible, actually calls us a stubborn people? It calls us a stiff-necked people, Am Kasharaf, a stiff-necked people. So you always get some Jews that say, I'm not going to follow you to the right, I'm not going to follow you to the left, I'm not going to go over there with you, I'm not going to go over here with you. I'm going to do it my way, I'm going to carve out my own path. We're a stubborn people, and being stubborn is a bad thing. We don't listen as much as we should. We don't make changes or improvements as much as we should. But very rarely, being stubborn can also be a good thing. For example, the Greeks tried to take away our Jewishness, and we said no, we want to remain Jewish. The Romans tried to take away our Jewishness, and we said no, we want to remain Jewish. The Christians tried to take away our Jewishness. We said no. The Muslims, the Crusaders, the Enlightenment, the Russians, the Nazis, everyone's trying to take away our Jewishness, and we stubbornly say no. So here's the thing. If you have two Jewish parents today, even in our modern assimilating world, the chances of the child staying identified as a Jew are strong. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, but the vast majority of Jews being raised in a Jewish household with Jewish parents remain Jewish. We are stubborn and we stubbornly hold on to our identity. Just look at the Orthodox Jews. Compare that to what happens when you have an interfaith marriage, meaning a Jew and a non-Jew. Statistically, you might think, and it would be reasonable, that the child would have a 50% chance at remaining Jewish. The truth is that I wish it were 50%. I wish it were 40%. I wish it were 30. Just look at the descendants of these families. I wish that there was even a 20% chance that they will remain Jewish. If you look at these studies, you will find that a very small percentage of Jews from interfaith marriages remain Jewish, and an even smaller percentage actually chooses being Jewish as a religion. They may say that they're Jewish because their great-grandmother was Jewish, but they identify as Christian or Muslim or they're atheists. Then another small percentage actually visits Israel, celebrates the holidays, knows Hebrew, reads the Tanakh. So of the percentage of those children of interfaith marriages, what percentage of them will actually marry Jewish? 8 to 14%. 8 to 14% of the children that come from interfaith marriages marry Jewish. And it goes down from there in terms of their great-grandchildren. Personally, I cannot support something that spells the destruction of my people. People do what they want to do regardless and make excuses to try to justify it. And I'm not here to judge anyone. I'm saying that I don't support it as it is an act that erases the Jewish identity. Some will say, well, my spouse supports me being Jewish and my Jewish lifestyle. And to them I would say, well, tell them to convert. What's really stopping them? If they are okay with being with a Jewish person, okay with celebrating the holidays, they're okay with being in a Jewish community, observing Torah, then why not convert them? People have converted for love many times throughout our history. If we look at the story of Ruth, who clung to Naomi, Naomi pleaded with Ruth and her sister that she has no more sons for them to marry and to return home after their husbands died. But Ruth clung to Naomi and said, where you go, I will go. Your God will be my God. Was this not done out of love? She loved Naomi and she didn't want to return home. And Ruth converted to Judaism right there on the spot and accepted the God of Israel. So this story lets me know that you can convert for love. So those are my personal reasons on why I choose not to support or encourage Jews marrying non-Jews. It is the destruction of our people because the percentage of children that marry someone Jewish is very small. The percentage of people that come from interfaith marriages that still identify as being Jewish is very small. Not to mention the grandchildren or great-grandchildren. I want Judaism to live. And as Jews, we must recognize that this is a team sport. Of course, there are those that don't have children and things like that, but then I would still encourage them to undergo a conversion while helping out the Jewish community. If you're Jewish and you're interested in someone who isn't, I would say go against the norm and try to get them to become Jewish. Yes, you've heard from the Orthodox movement that no one has to become Jewish and just be a Noahide. That's bullcrap. Tell them to become Jewish and tell them it is an amazing heritage, culture, and tradition going back over 3,000 years. If the world had more Jews it would be a better place, and it would make my job on this platform in terms of decreasing anti Semitism a lot easier. The God of Israel is available to anyone and everyone that wants to adhere to his Torah. So marry someone Jewish. And if you choose to date someone that isn't Jewish, then brush up on your Torah skills and get them converted. This is my personal feelings towards marriage, interfaith marriages, etc. I believe that if you are Jewish, then you have a duty and responsibility to marry someone who is Jewish. And if you choose to find someone that isn't Jewish, then convert them. Many people have converted for love. And understand that this is a team sport. Most Jews that I've come across have been either non-religious and selfish. I just want to do what I want to do. But understand that being Jewish is a team sport. It's about the collective. You're part of something that's bigger than yourself. And I also encourage marriage. Marriage still works. It's still an amazing, beautiful thing. And I feel for so many women because the world, more specifically, this country of America, has lied to women. They've told women to graduate from high school, then go to college, travel the world, get a good career, get a house, get a vehicle, become independent. And then somewhere in your 30s, then settle down and find a husband. As if it were that easy. As if when you're done doing all of that, you're going to be able to turn around and there is just going to be this line of guys willing to take your hand. My hope is that women and men put as much focus and determination and make it a priority to find the person that you love and want to spend the rest of your life with. Put as much effort into that as you do your schooling, your career, getting that house, that vehicle. Put just as much focus and effort into finding a spouse. Because in this day and age, people have said that who wants to be married nowadays? And I flipped that question. Why would you want to be single nowadays? With all that's going on, the one constant that you can cherish and that you can hang your hat on is the institution of marriage. Finding someone that will walk through day in and day out of life with you. Finding that partner, that best friend. As men, we think we're going to live forever. But we're not. But the only way that you get a glimpse of immortality is to invest in things that will outlive you. That's why it's so important to find a spouse and to have children. It's a mitzvah. It's a Torah command. Deuteronomy chapter 24 verse 1 states that a man, it is a mitzvah, it is a law to get married. It's actually a sin in Jewish tradition for you to be single for no good reason. It is a law to be fruitful and multiply, have children. Because it forces you to grow up. It forces you to mature. It forces you to gain wisdom and look at different perspectives. had to have someone to bounce different ideas off of. It's very important to your growth. But now you have this agenda being pushed that you can be self sufficient. You can be independent. Men don't need women. Women don't need men. And then people are wondering why we have a mental health crisis. Because absent of love and God, people are stripped and being robbed of purpose. You're stealing that purpose from them. So I urge people to find love. Again, as men, invest in something that will outlive you. My hope is that is family or Jewish community or poetry or music, dancing, but invest in something that will outlive you. I recently did a presentation on why be Jewish. And this is going to be why marry Jewish. Because you creating a solid foundation and a solid family, Jewish family, is good for the collective. The world would be a better place if more Jews were in it. So marry Jewish. And if you don't find a nice Jewish man or woman, then find someone who isn't Jewish and convert them. The world will be a better place if we had more Jews. And don't buy into the narrative and the agendas that people are trying to push that you're fine by yourself. You know, God during creation created light, saw that it was good. Created vegetation, saw that it was good. Created man, saw that it was good. The first time that God uses the term not good is when he sees that man is alone. And he declares it is not good for man to be alone. As human beings, we crave companionship. And it's okay to admit that, as opposed to giving in to TikTok trends and social media. You know, you have these bitter individuals that marriage didn't work for them, so they want to try to ruin it and project their feelings about it to other people. Think for yourself. And as I always encourage on this platform, think. It ain't illegal yet, but they're working on it. So, if you found this presentation helpful, informative, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Do me an even greater favor and subscribe to my channel. I always appreciate all the support that I am given. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Blade Talk. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and until the next presentation, you all take care.